and roll from here. So context, this is probably motherhood and apple pie for all of you, but all your customers are looking at application modernization as a trend that they need to adapt to. They're moving from monolithic on-prem applications, and in this case, on-prem probably meant their own data center, their own hardware, to containerize their applications and make them cloud enabled, getting them portability, getting them standardization in how they're run and deployed, and then potentially breaking those applications down into microservices that are truly cloud native and have the applications run in all these different environments, whether it's VMware, in other VMs, AWS, Kubernetes, Azure, anywhere your customer wants to run. So this is the trend and kind of the highlights the context of why application delivery is changing. But there's other trends that go behind that. Obviously, container adoption with Docker and Kubernetes is driving the market. It has a natural fit with modern development techniques, things like Agile, DevOps, GitOps, microservices. They just fit nicely together. It gives the opportunity for scalability and resilience, which again fits modern CI/CD. You want to be able to support these trends as they go. And as a vendor, you probably want to write your application once, but have it run standard the same everywhere. Now, challenges are there's still early phases of the industry adoption of these technologies. Common standards are forming, but they're not necessarily as standard as we might hope across your customer base. Containers immutability maybe conflicts a little bit with modern development practices. There's all kinds of Kubernetes platforms out there and more coming. What are you using? What are your customers using? And backwards compatibility can be an issue, especially in open source where things move very quickly. There's a lot of independent projects and all of them are releasing, 3-4 times a year, if not faster. So I brought this slide up in our keynote, but wanted to reemphasize, this is why customers choose Replicated, because they have these types of challenges that help them be able to sell more, be able to install faster for their customers, and be able to support those customers more efficiently. The point of this session is to show you a little bit more detail on how we do that, again, for these different types of environments, taking your application, answering these various questions, and being able to deliver it to your customer environment, distributing your software. So at a top level, this is really what we're all about. We're helping software vendors distribute their apps to their customers. Your containerized or Kubernetes managed app, giving you the flexibility, speed, and ease for any customer environment, whether they're already running Kubernetes or not, and being able to deliver wherever they are, on premises, modern on-prem, in air-gapped environments, or in the cloud. This is how we see modern on-prem, being able to handle all these environments and make your application run and install seamlessly in any different environment. We talked a little bit about it, but if you're still new to Replicated, the company's actually been around for about 7 years. It's been a nice steady growth. They've chosen to pace ourselves and make sure we have good product market fit. We're keeping up with trends. We've raised about 85 million to date, including last summer, about a year ago, 50 million Series C from Allen Rock Capital. And you can see the nice growth curve we're expecting here and continuing to grow into 2022. So you're amongst good company, and really excited to show where we're going with these technologies. Our customer base tends to be sorted into 3 different types of Replicated customers. There's SaaS companies, for example, Sneak or Circle CI. And these SaaS companies have a product, but they've only run it in a SaaS type model. So when their customer says, hey, I want to run this on my own environment, my own infrastructure, or in a cloud environment that I control, a VPC, being able to deliver to those customers is important because it opens up more market share for these SaaS vendors, but they want to do it without more complexity. So how do they get a single architecture that can deliver a SaaS style application, but deliver it to a customer managed environment? Probably the core of our customer base, those traditional on-prem vendors, people who have delivered to traditional data centers, to VMs, to bare metal machines, and they have applications that they haven't yet modernized, or they're beginning to modernize now. Now, it's a prerequisite that you have to be able to run in a container to use Replicated, but companies like Puppet or UiPath maybe got their start before containers were common, and they needed to modernize their own application to deliver to customer environments and increase their adoption rates and stay current with the customers. Third group is really open core customers. So these are typically having multiple editions. They may have a purely open source free edition out there. They may have various enterprise editions. Companies like HashiCorp with Terraform, Rocket.chat are examples here. What they want to do is manage these different editions, support customers wherever they are in that cycle, and of course, convert them to become paying customers. That's how they monetize and go from that freemium model to premium and actually start to earn some revenue. So again, tying it back to who our customers are and how they get value as they go. Here's an example of Pluralsight Flow. This was a enterprise SaaS startup, and then they're focused on should they do an on-prem version or walk away from that business. And they saw that with RepliCon, they're able to maintain one version of their application, but deliver it to any customer environment. So again, that's opening up those markets without creating a lot of overhead and burden on them. I think this is useful to look at the product in this way, but I want to jump out for a little bit and stop sharing this and actually play for you a demo that'll give you a feel for what the product actually looks like, summarize it. And don't worry, I know it's a quick demo. It's about 4.5 minutes. After that, I'm going to dive into explaining a little bit more of what it covered. So let me share my player here and I will run this for you. You'll get to hear from David for the next 4.5 minutes, and then I'll come back and I'm going to tell you more detail how these features work.
Welcome to an overview of the Replicated platform. Companies that need access to sensitive data require one thing in particular: the ability to bring the application to the data and not the other way around. These Replicated customers are shipping their applications to the most data-sensitive enterprises and organizations on Earth. Be it dev tools, security platforms, or anything else, Replicated provides a one-stop platform for them to securely distribute and manage their applications in any customer-hosted environment. A great example of that is HashiCorp, who delivers every instance of Terraform Enterprise through Replicated. They'd initially built an installer in-house, but after running into countless support and maintenance issues, decided to partner with Replicated for their enterprise app delivery. HashiCorp saved over $3 million in development costs through choosing to leverage Replicated, and even expanded their total addressable market by gaining the ability to ship to every major cloud platform. Software vendors are currently using Replicated to deliver their apps to 65 of the Fortune 100. These enterprise customers are banks, financial institutions, healthcare providers, and more, with some of the most sensitive data on the planet. The core of Replicated is this: software vendors send us YAML and containers, and we provide all of the code, packages, and add-ons to get that application running in any environment that their customers may have. That ranges from customers that may have zero Kubernetes experience to experts with opinionated needs regarding DevOps, air-gap installs, custom registries, and unique security processes. We do this with a combination of tooling: vendor tools for your team to operationalize the deployment of your software into any environment, including release channels, licensing and entitlements, and more, and end customer tools to simplify and automate app management on their end. That means installation and configuration, pre-flight checks and support tools, automatic updates, and more. As a side note, everything that goes into the customer side is entirely open sourced, including our admin console shown here. What we see here is the admin console dashboard, which provides a detailed view of the application running in the end user's environment. We can see a comprehensive version history. We can dig into the YAML for pre-flight checks, which are entirely programmable by the vendor to outline core usage, memory allocation, storage class, and more. Anything necessary to ensure that that application runs smoothly. Here we see a configuration file where vendors can define all parameters that would appear on an initial configuration screen presented to the end customer. Configuration includes conditional logic and templating for database preferences, whether the install is a proof of concept, and more. That means that vendors can leverage this one asset for installs going to dev, test, or even production. If anything goes wrong, there's a detailed analyzer interface to monitor and check everything occurring within the application. Through a YAML file, you can vastly speed up troubleshooting without having to hop on a support call. All of the raw data is contained within a single bundle, so if an end user encounters an issue that you can't solve through analyzers, they can download the entire bundle and send it back to you for additional help. In this case, we have an embedded cluster where Replicated is provided the Kubernetes. There's a full dashboard for expanding that cluster entirely based on the open source project curl.sh. Curl is a Kubernetes distro builder with the ability to configure and select all add-ons for a cluster, and even provides air-gap capabilities. The other open source project built into the replicated platform is Troubleshoot, a kube control plugin that provides diagnostic tools for Kubernetes applications that codify your support analysis to run offline and enables your customers to self-remediate. Here we have our vendor tools, including release channels where vendors can manage application releases for individual versions. All configurations necessary are contained in easy-to-manage YAML files, from secrets handling to database management and more. Vendors can see all current customers and drill down into their individual release channels, license expirations and types, plus feature entitlements. This is entirely white labeled and away from the customer experience. Customers are presented with a download portal that requires a unique password for each customer. Assets can be sent manually with a license file and install scripts to run. This is the white labeled experience for customers, where they can select whether the application is being installed on an existing cluster or a new cluster on a virtual machine, as well as the version to be installed. Customers can click to download an install bundle for use with the Kubernetes installer. Finally, vendors can go back to the release channels dashboard and see all of their happy customers and monitor adoption rates. Thanks so much for watching. If you have any
All right, hopefully that was a good intro. I want to come back and into my main presentation here and share with you and go a little bit deeper into how that works and what the expectations are on you and your customers as we go. So here's another look at, this is architecture, but really it's as much responsibilities. So if we look at this left column where it talks about your application, you as the vendor are responsible for bringing a containerized app. You need to have that application configuration info that's necessary. You should have a licensing model on how customers are going to adapt it or adopt it and use it. And you may have a public repo or a registry for your container images for your application. On the right side, your customer is responsible for providing an existing Kubernetes cluster or just compute resources, instances or VMs. They can be in a cloud, they can be in their own data center, wherever that they can run. They need to provide local configuration info, sometimes networking, ingress, egress, those types of things. Optionally, they can have a private registry if they want to manage their own images, and air gap locations if they need to manage more securely disconnected. What Replicated does is it bridges these two areas between your application and your customer environments. And for vendors, we're giving you that vendor portal, that user interface that helps you do release packaging, distribution, and license management. We'll give you a CLI, an API if you want to automate things or do them from the command line or script them into other applications, and a download portal you can set up where the customer can pull the application from on demand. For your customers, they get an admin console UI that you saw there that enables them to install and do updates so that your software, they can actually automate updates if they want to do patches for CVEs or minor releases automatically, or even major releases if they want to be completely hands off. They get a command line, one line command they can use to install your software, and optionally a Kubernetes installer if they don't have an existing cluster. Both you and your customer get troubleshooting and support capabilities with those pre-flight checks to check the host and application level requirements for the application before installing it, and support bundles that bundle up log information. They can redact any secrets or confidential information and share directly with you, so you don't have to go back and forth with the customer trying to get information on what they're running and how they're running it. So again, from a vendor tools point of view, the goal here is to operationalize the distribution delivery of your software. We have those release channels. You could have beta, you could have alpha, you could have latest, you could have free edition, enterprise edition, et cetera. And licensing and entitlements. You get these features with this edition, you get these features with a trial. It's a 30-day key, it's a 1-year key, however you want to manage that. We can automate all of that and provide unique licenses for your customers to turn on the right features, and then help different people in your organization, whether they're product managers, developers, field engineers, TAMs, support. Each one of them can interface and use Replicated to manage that customer's experience as they're installing and as they're running long-term. There's two ways we install that was alluded to in the video. COTS is an open source project that lets you install into an existing cluster. So if that customer already has Kubernetes, they're providing the hardware, the operating system, the Kubernetes, and things like CNI, monitoring, registry, et cetera. What we're doing is we're using COTS to bundle up your application. And you can see a single example here, one line, kubectl, COTS, install your app. And your app, of course, would be what you want to call that application, that version. And so it will automatically deploy it into that environment, configure it, set it up and running based on your app configuration and the customer's localized environment information. The other approach is using curl, and curl adds on to COTS. What curl does is essentially lets you build your own Kubernetes distribution and associated projects, add-ons, capabilities it might need, like Rook or Weave or Registry. And again, gives them a one-line command. In this case, though, it's going to bootstrap installing the Kubernetes and associated projects, then use COTS to deploy your application. So this would be for a new cluster if a customer doesn't have one or wants to have a dedicated cluster for you. In this case, all your end user needs to provide is the hardware environment, the compute resources, and the operating system for it to run. Everything else is taken care of. So if you're less comfortable with Kubernetes, your customer is less comfortable with Kubernetes, this is a great way to get them up and running even faster. There is actually a third install model, which has been talked about right now in another breakout sessions, being able to use Helm charts. We won't go into that now, but I encourage you to go back and watch a recording or read the blogs when we push more information on that live. But I also wanted to dive a little bit deeper into the customer tools. And again, point out, it's not just install. This is also simplifying and automating the application management for ongoing operations, being able to support day 2 types of operations. Again, pre-flight checks, support tools that help you make sure the environment's suitable, has enough resources, like the right projects, the right versions of Kubernetes, the right memory and processors, whatever you need for your application to run. Support tools that help you troubleshoot. They give you insight into what was run. They deliver all the configuration info, YAML files back to you so you can dive in and understand, okay, why won't this run? What is the issue? And be able to isolate and solve it very quickly without having to go try and collect all that information yourself. We can let the customer provide localized install and config info. Like I said, they can automate updates if they want and select what the pattern of updates they want to do automatically, or they can manually manage it. We also give you customer tools for those air-gapped environments, as mentioned previously. They can download the actual application, have the installer and the application software containerized, and they can put it on, I don't know, USB stick and sneakernet into their environment. And we can do the same for extracting redacted log files for support. We can do the same for updates, but jump over that network gap to an air gap type of environment. So as a result of this, what we find is that replicated customers on average are able to install about 4 times faster. This came from that dimensional research study. The industry average found that only 16% could install in less than 7 days. Many took 2 weeks, 4 weeks, even 3 months, a few longer than that, typically to install. For replicated customers, the enterprises that are using this, 65% of them are doing it in less than 7 days, and very few are taking more than 2 weeks or a month. So finding that depending upon the complexity of the application, there may still be some things, but by automating, by standardizing, by making it work consistently in any environment, this just reduces greatly the burden on your field engineers, on what they need to do to support and manage their environments. And then reduces escalations, the number of times they have to call on developers and say, hey, it's not working in this customer's environment. What's wrong? Okay, I need to see log files back and forth. All those things that just add burden and slow down your field teams from selling and delighting the customers and make it a really manual process. We automate all of that, and that's a great result. And this isn't just necessarily first-time installs. This applies for upgrades, updates, any other sort of new releases you want to push out to your customers. We can greatly simplify those as well. I mentioned air gap, and this is an interesting piece of that study too, because we can support air gap, because we can build in standardization, security, we can do SBOM if you want. We're able to reach many more secure customers than most software vendors report that they can. If they're trying to sell to government or financial services or healthcare or manufacturing, where it's very secure, the industry average is much lower than using replicated, where we provide the additional tooling that makes it easier to reach those most secure customer environments, get across the air gap, but still be able to efficiently manage those types of customers and their environments. So again, I just want to keep hammering on the value point. I think this is really important to justify any expenses. Here's a couple more examples of customers. One was a CI/CD SaaS company with less than 100 employees. They were doing 3 field team installs per month. You can do the math here. This is like what that ROI calculator is doing for you. $180,000 salary, 2 engineers per install, 2 escalations per week. Each time takes 3 hours to recover. That shows a cost per week per install of $1,300 and savings of $15,000 and change per month. Another example is a big infrastructure software company. This is a little bit larger, 1,000 employees. They're doing 9 installs a month, similar salary, but takes 4 engineers each time, having 10 escalations per week, an average time to resolve those escalations of an hour of developer time. And again, you see a cost per week per install of over $1,000, savings of a month of $33,000. So the software pays for itself quickly. It's got a lot of ways it can add value. But again, it's not just the technical capabilities. I encourage you to go back and do some of the math. We have people who can help you do these calculations and look specifically for your environment to better understand what impact this will have for you. So that's a high level intro and overview. I know there's going to be more detailed questions. What I'd really encourage is if you're interested, let's get a team with you and they can do a much longer detailed demo. They can talk to you specifically about your concerns, your environment, how your application needs to run, what your customers are going for, all those types of things, and really kind of tailor the conversation to you. But hopefully this was a productive session to give you a quick high-level introduction to who we are and what we're doing. Before I close rambling at you, I want to point out this was only the first round of breakouts. We will rejoin the main group in a couple of minutes and have another round of breakouts. These will be deeper dives into different areas. Session 1 talks about pre-flight checks and how you can get better installation success. Alex Parker, one of our product managers, will be covering that one. Session 2, your next choice is Field Labs. You can learn how to be a replicated expert. And Dex, who leads our sales engineering and customer success programs, will be going through that session. The third one, Chris Sanders on our support team will talk about using support bundles and how to extract customer information, redact that information so that they feel comfortable sharing it with you. And if there's an issue you need to escalate to us, how we can also engage with you and provide that higher level support. As Amber said in the product keynote, being able to now do time zone based support 24/7 to different time zones around the world with more field engineers in different geos, having more technical support and actually helping you troubleshoot Kubernetes projects and associated parts of the environment. That's really useful. And Chris will go into that in more detail too. So lots of more breakouts. When you exit this Zoom, you'll want to return back to the main meeting, and Grant will welcome people back there, and you'll be able to choose your next breakout and continue on. We also have Wallaroo, a customer, doing a talk after the next round of breakouts. So stay tuned for that. I'm going to open up and see if there's any chat here, but feel free to ask questions now if you like, or bring them back to the main group. I'm just going to take a look here at the chat and see what has come in then. There's a question from Wade who wants to know how we can also make our lives easier in our own environments, doing our own SaaS install. We have a SaaS setup where we can execute for end customers, multi-tenant, looking for support on-prem, in cloud, as we push out microservice updates. Individual ones interested in not only manage the whole install, but small updates. So that's a great point. What we want to do here is we want to talk briefly about the release channels and how we can have each release can have individual updates with it. And that has all the new binaries that are associated with it, has any other changes. They can use semantic versioning where we can indicate which releases are required and what order they need to be applied. Maybe you can skip minor releases, but you can't skip a major one before you upgrade. We can push those out if your end users allow you, or we can reserve them back. But it looks like we've run out of time. I'm going to let you go back to the main session and pick some new topics. So thanks for joining. Stay tuned.